Welcome to the National Archives Know Your Records program. My name is Andrea Bassing-Matney, and we are broadcasting live from the National Archives building in Washington, D.C. We're so pleased you have joined us today. For those of you here on site, we will take your questions at the end of the program. We ask that you use the aisle microphones when you have your questions, and there's also several handouts that are available. I left those on a table outside of the room. For those of you who are watching online, you can also participate in this live broadcast and ask questions by using the chat feature. You can also access the handouts and the presentation slides, as well as a captioning. Those are all available as hyperlinks, again, on this webpage. So today's program is presented by Jason Klingerman. He will demonstrate recent updates to the National Archives catalog and how you can further your research using this online tool. Mr. Klingerman started with the National Archives in 2007 as a student employee. He currently serves as the Chief of the Digital Public Access Branch in the Office of Innovation. Before coming here, he went to undergraduate school at the University of Maryland College Park and graduate school at Towson University. And now for our presentation on updates to the National Archives catalog. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our presenter, Jason Klingerman.
Thanks, Andrea. As Andrea mentioned, I'm Jason Klingerman. I'm going to go through some of the updates to the National Archives catalog that we've made recently. On February 15th, we launched an update to the catalog that will improve the research experience for our users. Today, I want to basically go over these features and also highlight some ways that you all can communicate with us. So what's new about our newest version? Well, basically the major changes affect 5 areas. Those include search, user interface, user contributions, API, and moderation. For search, we've basically vastly improved the advanced search. We also improved the brief results of the search. We've added some additional data elements to the brief search to make it more apparent as to what you're looking at. We've improved the basis of the file types. This basically means that before the file types were manually entered and oftentimes inaccurate. Now, for digital objects, it actually pulls what the real file type is. We also cleaned up the available online tab in the brief results. We used to have both digital records and web pages in there, but we actually removed the web pages and left those in a separate tab just for web pages. As to the user interface, we updated the home page. We made configurable background images. So basically, when you go to the landing page, you see an actual record from the National Archives catalog on the background. We also changed the color scheme. For years, we were operating under a blue color scheme, and now we've gone to a more modern white with grayscale. We also added a configurable announcement bar to the top of the home page. So if we have to make announcements such as maintenance downtime to the catalog, research rooms are closed, anything to that effect, we can actually put those announcements right on the catalog for users to see. We've also changed the online availability notice. So what this is in actual results, when you click in, sometimes it would say some or all of these records may not be available online. Sometimes now that we're digitizing a lot more than we used to, sometimes an entire series may be digitized. So in that situation, we'd actually remove that notice so that people would know that basically the whole series is digitized. We may even put in a statement that says every record in this series is digitally available. Another thing we've done for the user interface is we've included what are called glyphicons. This is a suite of buttons and symbols that are standard throughout the catalog now. Instead of kind of using customized buttons and symbols that our vendor initially selected, we chose to use the standardized glyphicons. Another huge change in this version is an addition of a new user contribution method. So previously we had tags and transcriptions that users could contribute. We still have those, but now you can also comment in the catalog. We've also improved the user account pages, so users can better keep track of their contributions. They can even export them or view another user's contributions. And we've also added very apparent help and policy links. And then some of the other major changes are the API. We've added the PDF text layer. So this means that when records are scanned and put into a PDF format, there is a text layer that exists for optical character recognition software that runs and basically takes that text and turns it into a computer text. So that data now lives in our API. For those of you who don't know, an API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's basically a way to read or write to our data using a programming language. This is for users who might want to interact with our system and our data in ways that don't utilize the user interface. And then some of the final changes are around moderation. In adding a comments feature, we wanted to have the ability to also moderate those so that people don't submit comments or other contributions that violate our policy. So in the event that our commenting feature is abused and people post with the API, for example, massive amounts of comments, instead of having to remove them one by one, we can now remove them in bulk if we are victim to a spam attack, so to speak. And then we've also fixed the moderator workbench so we're able to better keep track of the contributions. Let me just say we will not alter or edit contributions as a habit, only if it violates our policy. I also wanted to highlight some areas where you guys can all communicate with us. So if you experience issues while you're using the catalog, or you have questions about it, or even ideas on how we can improve it, or just any general comments, you can email us directly at catalog@nara.gov. We also recently kicked off an email newsletter that I encourage you all to sign up for. In this newsletter, we will feature updates to the catalog, highlight citizen archivist missions, and other things happening with the archives around the catalog, and much, much more. We're also doing a series of blog posts on the Narrations blog, and it'll feature some of this new functionality with this launch. As of right now, we've just had an initial blog post about the launch, and then we also just posted one last week about some of the changes to the search functionality, and then our next blog post will be about the API, and then we have even more coming out. So make sure you check with the Narrations blog periodically if you want to learn some more details about our new functionality. So now let's go over and actually check out the catalog and see some of the new features. So if you want to follow along, you can enter in your browser catalog.archives.gov, and that'll take you right there. So let me jump over here. So when you go to catalog.archives.gov, the first thing you'll notice is the new landing page. So here we have an example of a National Archives record in the background with the search bar floating over top. You can actually view more information about the image if you're interested by clicking on this link down here, and that will take you to the detailed record about that image, and you can find out a lot more about it if you'd like. And every time you refresh the page, a new image pops up. So I'm going to run a search right now to kind of show you some of the changes to the results section. So I'm going to run my favorite search, which is the word Truman. And here you'll see the brief results view. So at the top here we have some digital objects, and then below that we have some websites. And then the ones that don't have thumbnails, those are just descriptions of records that do not represent digitized copies. So if you want to look at only digitized copies of records, you can either click on, or just click on the ones that have those thumbnails, or if you just click the Available Online tab, that'll limit your search to just those available online. But going back to the regular results view, as I mentioned, we added some additional data fields to the brief results to help researchers. So for example, here we have a container identifier. Some of the other data that we added is, in addition to the container identifier, is the HMS and MLR entry numbers, and also the local identifiers where they exist. And local identifiers are especially important for special media records like photographs and videos. A lot of the other functionality is the same from the previous version, such as the refined by data source and the sorting and the highlighting results. We do also have an export feature here, which existed previously, but we've made some changes to show that you can also get comments in the export feature. But besides that, all the functionality has remained the same for exports. So next I want to show you the changes that we've done to advanced search, because for me, this is one of the biggest improvements that we've made to this version of the catalog. To get to advanced search, click on the advanced search link right here next to the search bar. Now, if you're coming from the home page, there's no advanced search link on the home page. Oops, sorry about that. So to get to the advanced search from the home page, you have to click on the little search icon first, and then it'll bring you to blank results, and then you have to click on advanced search. So here, in the previous version, the only data fields that were displayed were those that were shared between the data sources selected up here at the top. And they would disappear and reappear as you selected different data sources, and it was not very intuitive, and we actually received a lot of complaints about that. So in direct response to those complaints, we actually redesigned this. So now all the fields are visible, but instead of them disappearing and reappearing depending on what you select, they'll just be grayed out. So you see I clicked authority records, and some fields grayed out. If I click web pages, even more fields gray out. By default, all search fields are apparent because these two data sources are selected. So either archival descriptions or archival materials online will allow you to search upon all fields. It's when you get into these other two that you start to limit which fields you can search on. Just to kind of explain what each of those data sources mean, archival descriptions only searches descriptions of records. This actually excludes digitized records. If you're only interested in digitized records, then only check archival materials online, and that will exclude descriptions only. So that will be exclusively digitized records. If you want a mixture of both, leave it how it is by default with both checked. Authority records searches descriptions of authority records. These include organizations, individual names, and other types of authorities in the system. And then web pages searches only upon archives.gov or presidential library websites. Another thing we've done in direct response to some complaints that we received and some feedback we got was we moved the record group and collection ID search bar to the top. So before, that was buried pretty far down, and that's a really popular field that people like to search on. And so in response to that feedback, we pushed that to the top. So it's right there under the search term to put in. Another big change to the advanced search is we've actually enhanced the date search features. So previously, you could only search on a date range, and at that, you could only search for a begin and an end year. You couldn't enter a specific date in the range. So now, you can search by date range, and you can enter either the month, the day, and the year in both the begin and the end. But then we've also added two other date search features. We've added search by exact date, which allows you just to enter an individual date, and it'll pull back records for an exact date if that data exists. And we've also added search by a recurring date. So this is where you might search on a specific day, but not attached to a year. So for example, if you wanted to search all records that were dated for the 4th of July, but you didn't care what year it was from or know what year you're looking for, you could just enter 0704 in here, and it would search for all records from that date. The last of the features I'd like to demonstrate today is the comments feature, and this is a really exciting way that users can actually interact with the records and also with staff, because staff are on here and can respond to your comments where appropriate. So I'm going to show you an example of one that has comments. So give me a second here while I search. So this record, this is a Navy deck log. These are basically logs that show daily activity on a particular naval vessel. This one is the De Haven for 1969. And on page 27, there's a comment here. Now, to get to the comment, you can either click View/Add Contributions, or you can actually click on this little icon. This little icon on the thumbnail is how you can tell whether or not there is a contribution on the page. So any of these that don't have that icon means nobody has either commented, tagged, or transcribed. This icon means that there's either a tag, a comment, or a transcription, but it won't tell you which one of them. You click on that, and you get the pop-up window, and here you'll see somebody commented Steve Campbell, BTFN, reported for duty 20th September, not shown on log. So basically, somebody that knows something about what this ship was doing in 1969 actually jumped on here and commented and said that there was information left out from the log, and so they actually enhanced the context of this record with additional information. And this is a real neat way that researchers can interact with the records by providing comments. We had another situation where a guy was actually one of the individuals in a photograph from military records, and he said, "That's me in the back holding the camera." So it's kind of neat to interact with researchers who have additional information that we don't have, and it helps other researchers get more context. Back to the contributions pop-up. As I mentioned, we also have a policy for citizen contributions, and we have that policy link right here. So as a general rule, we will not modify or remove contributions unless they violate our policy. So if you're interested in what might violate our policy, just go ahead and click on that link. We also have the help link if you have questions about how to contribute, how you might transcribe, how to use comments. That information all lies there. So that's really all of the major new features that I wanted to demonstrate today. As discussed, many of the changes are on the back end. One second. And so not readily apparent to the user from the user interface. The ones that I showed you today were the only ones that are really readily apparent to the user. Just know that we're still working to improve the catalog. We are actually starting a new contract, and we have a host of new development for the catalog that will hopefully spawn even better changes to the catalog in the future. This concludes my presentation for today, so I would like to now open myself up to any questions or comments you may have about the newest version of the National Archives catalog.
Thank you so much, Jason. Looks like there's a lot of nice functionality that's similar to what I think of when I use Wikipedia and people contributing back and forth. That's really nice. I had a question.
Sure.
I do a newsletter for the National Archives called Researcher News, and sometimes I'll get photographs sent to me from presidential libraries. And I always want to be able to provide a link to the catalog for that image. So I was wondering if presidential library images will eventually make their way to the catalog.
Sure, that's a great question. So actually, a lot of presidential library images are in the catalog, although not all of them are. Right. Really, if we're putting something out to the public, we try to have it in the catalog first. So the hope is that if you're getting sent images from the presidential libraries, that it should already be in the catalog. If you have any of the basic metadata about that object, maybe the identifier or even the title, you can search the catalog and hopefully pull it back, and then you have a really short link there. Once you click on the actual result that pulls back that image, up in the search, the URL bar, there'll be a nice short link there that you can copy and paste and provide to researchers.
Yeah,
So.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I have one question here from our online audience, and okay. I encourage anybody who's watching us online to submit your questions in our chat feature. We have a question. I think this sounds like it's coming from a staff member who's very familiar with how things are organized here. So the question is, will there finally be a way to browse the HMS/MLR data for an entire record group as can be done now by using the blue and red binders at the Archives 2 Textual Records Research Room?
Sure, so that's actually a good question. That's some functionality that we are currently working on developing and designing, and we will hope to implement in a new version. I don't have a specific time frame, but it is something that we're attempting to mimic in the catalog, basically a way to browse the archival hierarchy without necessarily knowing exactly what you're looking for. So we're working on it.
Thank you so much. Another question has popped up, actually from the same person. Is there a way to know what series have not yet been described in the catalog? They're wondering how complete, it's kind of a hard question to answer, I know, but how complete is the online catalog now?
So at the moment, 93% of the National Archives records are described in the catalog. There is no way to tell which of the 7% are not described in the catalog. So those, you basically have to refer to the reference unit, and they should be able to retrieve that information from HMS, I would hope, or whatever other holdings maintenance system they have. But as of today, 93% of the records are described. So quite a bit, especially when you know how big our holdings are. I think it's the number of pages is in the billions. So that's a pretty good target that we're at. And we're shooting to get to 95% by the end of this fiscal year. So that would be the end of September.
That's fantastic news. Thank you. We'll give everybody a second. Are there any more questions from our online audience? If you have them, please submit them now. And I have to ask you while we're waiting, why Truman is your favorite search term?
That's funny. So I had somebody think that Truman was my favorite president. He's not. It's because when we were initially developing the catalog back in 2014, somehow in all the conversations that we had with the developers, Truman became the default search term that we used to demonstrate anything or to play around with it at all. And I don't know how that happened, but in the whole entire development process, that's the go-to search term. And so we've probably added undue weight to that term in terms of the top searches that we get. But it's just a simple search term that we know definitely pulls back digital objects and a mix of digital objects and descriptions only. So,
okay, thank you very much. At this time, I don't have any additional online questions, so I believe that is the conclusion of today's program. I thank you very much for your time and coming down here.
Thanks, Andrea.
And that is the end of our program. Thank you so much for attending.